Have you ever stared at a character from an old 8-bit game and just thought, how on earth did they create these memorable characters with, let's be honest, so little to work with? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and really dig into the magic of the 8-bit sprite.
I mean, just look at this little guy. He's got glasses, spiky hair, a whole vibe going on. But he's made of nothing more than a simple grid of chunky yellow squares. And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. How do you go from a simple grid of pixels to a character that feels totally alive? That's what we're here to figure out.
All right, so first things first, we've got to get our heads around the world these creators were living in. It wasn't about primitive tech. You have to think of it more like a unique artistic medium that was defined by this incredible creative challenge.
For these early game designers, limitation was truly the mother of all invention. See, they weren't just making art, they were basically solving a really complex puzzle. The whole challenge was to cook up something expressive and fun, all while being boxed in by a super rigid set of technical rules. And to give you a real sense of just how strict these rules were, let's take the ZX Spectrum, for example. In any 8x8 block of pixels, that's a tiny square, you could only have one color for the foreground, the ink, and one for the background. And brightness? Oh, you couldn't just make one pixel brighter. Nope, the entire block was either bright or it wasn't. Just try to imagine painting a masterpiece with those kinds of rules.
So, working inside these crazy constraints, how do they build their characters? Well, it all comes down to one single, fundamental building block: the sprite. This little thing was the absolute soul of every 8-bit game.
Okay, so that's the textbook definition. But let's make it simpler. A sprite is just the techie name for the little character, the bad guy, the bullet flying across the screen, or the power-up. It's basically any little graphic that moves around on its own, totally separate from the background. It's the digital puppet at the very heart of the show.
Of course, a static picture is, kind of boring, right? The real magic, the thing that makes it a game, is when these sprites start to move. So let's break down how they turned a single drawing into a living, breathing character.
And the way they did it is actually super simple, kind of like old school cartoons. You start by drawing your sprite in one pose. That's your first frame. Then you draw it again, but with a tiny little change. Maybe an arm moves up or a leg kicks forward. That's frame 2. You do this a few more times, and then you just flash them on the screen one after another really, really fast. And here we go, you can see that idea right here. Each one of these different character drawings is a single frame. When the game engine cycles through them super quick, our brains just naturally fill in the gaps and we see smooth movement. It's a simple trick, really, but it's the absolute bedrock of all 2D game animation.
So where did these artists actually do all this work? Well, they had a digital canvas called a sprite editor. We're going to look at the one from Arcade Game Designer. You can pretty much think of this as the artist's workshop. Let's take a quick look around. The interface is wonderfully simple. You've got that big grid on the left, that's your canvas, where you place every single pixel. And over on the right, you have some simple text telling you which sprite number you're working on, and, this is key, which animation frame you're currently editing.
The tools here are pretty straightforward. You can basically group them into 3 main jobs, and we'll start with the most basic stuff, the drawing tools.
Yeah, this is as fundamental as it gets. You just use the cursor keys to move your little pointer around the grid, and then, bam, hit the spacebar to either place a pixel down or erase one. It's literally the digital version of putting pencil to paper, one dot at a time.
Okay, so you've drawn something. But to really work fast and not go crazy, you need tools to help you organize all your little creations.
And man, these are just massive time savers. You can copy and paste entire sprites. So think about it, right? If you want your little character to face the other direction, you don't have to redraw the whole thing from scratch. Nope, you just copy it, hit H to flip it horizontally, and you're done. So simple, but so powerful.
All right, and now for my favorite part, the tools that actually bring your character to life.
This is where the real fun starts. You use I to pop in a new, blank frame for your animation, and R to get rid of one you don't like. But the best key here, for sure, is F. Not only does it jump you to the next frame, but if you just keep tapping it, tap, 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 you get a little live preview of your animation right there in the editor. How cool is that? You can see your creation moving before it even gets into the game.
So we've seen the tough constraints, the simple tools, and the clever techniques, but at the end of the day, all of this, it's all in service of one ultimate goal: transforming a handful of pixels into a character with real, actual personality.
And that brings us to this amazing piece of advice from the source material. The tools are there, right? The techniques can be learned. But the final, most important step is all about creativity. It's about not just copying what everyone else has done, but about giving your work your own unique style, your own touch. That's how a block of pixels gets a soul.
It's a fascinating process, isn't it? It really makes you think. Today, we have photorealistic graphics and basically endless technical possibilities. But in a world of infinite options, what can we still learn from the focused, powerful creativity that was born from having extreme limitations? Definitely something to chew on.